My name is Evelyn, and at 62 years old, I woke up on Thanksgiving morning expecting to serve a family feast like I had for decades. Instead, I discovered something on social media that shattered everything I thought I knew about my place in my son's life. What started as a perfectly set table for six ended with me standing in an empty house, holding a deed and making a decision that would change everything. The moment I chose to walk away from the only home I'd ever known, I had no idea that my disappearance would set off a chain of events that would force my family to finally see what they had taken for granted. If you've ever felt invisible to the people who should love you most, this story is for you. Hit that like button and subscribe because what happened next taught me the most painful and liberating lesson of my life. I woke up at 4:30 in the morning, just like I always did on Thanksgiving. The darkness outside my window felt heavier than usual, pressing against the glass like it knew something I didn't. I swung my legs out of bed and reached for the flannel apron hanging on the back of my bedroom door. It was my late husband's, faded and soft from years of use. Wearing it always made me feel like Tom was still here, standing beside me in the kitchen, sneaking bites of stuffing before dinner. The house was too quiet. Usually, by now, I'd hear the patter of little feet racing down the hallway, my grandchildren giggling as they burst into the kitchen asking if the turkey was ready yet. But this morning, there was nothing. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the creaking of old floorboards beneath my feet. I told myself they were probably still asleep. Daniel and Paige had mentioned they might arrive a little later this year. I pushed away the uneasy feeling settling in my chest and focused on the task at hand. The turkey needed to be prepped, the vegetables chopped, the table set. I had work to do. By 6 o'clock, I had the turkey in the oven and moved on to setting the dining room table. I pulled out the good china, the plates with the delicate gold trim that Tom and I received as a wedding gift 40 years ago. I arranged them carefully around the table, counting out 6 place settings. Daniel's favorite cranberry sauce went in the small crystal bowl. Paige's gluten-free stuffing would go in the serving dish to the left. The kids' little pumpkin-shaped place cards, the ones they'd made with construction paper and glitter last year, sat at their spots, slightly crumpled but precious. I stepped back and studied the table. Everything looked perfect. Everything looked ready. So why did I feel like something was terribly wrong? I glanced at the clock. 7:15. They should have been here by now, or at least called. I pulled my phone from my apron pocket and dialed Daniel's number. It rang 4 times before going to voicemail. "Hey, it's Daniel. Leave a message." Beep. "Hi, honey," I said, trying to keep my voice light. "Just checking in. Wondering what time you're planning to head over. The turkey's in the oven, and everything's ready. Call me back when you get this." I hung up and stared at the screen. Maybe I had the time wrong. Maybe they'd said noon instead of 9. I opened our family group chat and scrolled up to last week's messages, looking for confirmation. But no, there it was. Daniel had written, "We'll be there by 9, Mom. Can't wait." I typed out a new message. "Everything all right? Did the kids sleep in?" I watched the screen. Delivered. But no response. Not even the 3 little dots that meant someone was typing. The minutes dragged by like hours. I busied myself with small tasks, wiping down counters that were already clean, rearranging serving spoons, checking the turkey even though I knew it needed at least 3 more hours. At 8:30, I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat down at the kitchen table, my phone clutched in my hand. That's when I made the mistake of opening Facebook. The first post on my feed stopped my heart. It was uploaded just 5 minutes ago. The photo showed Daniel, Paige, and my 2 beautiful grandchildren standing in an airport terminal, boarding passes in hand, enormous smiles plastered across their faces. They were dressed in vacation clothes, casual and excited. The kids held stuffed animals. Paige wore oversized sunglasses pushed up on her head. The caption read, "First class, here we come. So grateful for this amazing family vacation." I stared at the screen, my coffee growing cold in my hand. Family vacation. Thanksgiving morning. First class. My hands trembled as I zoomed in on the photo, studying every detail like it might reveal some explanation that made sense. And that's when I saw it. The boarding passes in Daniel's hand. I could just barely make out the seat numbers.
3A, 3B, 3C, 3D.
Rows of 3. First class. For seats. My breath caught in my throat. For seats. Daniel, Paige, and the 2 kids. Not 5. Not 6.
4.
I remembered the conversation we'd had a month ago. Daniel had called me, excited, saying he'd booked a surprise trip for the family. All of us, Mom. You, me, Paige, and the kids. We're going to the Bahamas for Thanksgiving. First class tickets. I got an amazing deal. I'd been hesitant at first, worried about the cost, about leaving the house during the holidays. But Daniel had insisted. You deserve this, Mom. After everything you've done for us, after losing Dad, you deserve to be spoiled a little. I'd agreed. I'd even packed a bag last week, a small suitcase with sundresses and sandals I hadn't worn in years. It was sitting upstairs in my closet right now, ready to go. But they'd left without me. I zoomed in on the boarding passes again, my vision blurring with tears. Those seats, 3A through 3D. Those were the exact seats Daniel had shown me when he first booked the tickets. He'd sent me a screenshot, the confirmation email with all our names listed. 5 seats across 2 rows. He'd said it was non-refundable, impossible to change. But somehow, my name had been removed. Quietly, deliberately, without a single word to me. I stood up so fast my chair scraped against the floor. I walked to the window and stared out at the empty driveway, the street beyond, the neighborhood still sleeping peacefully. My reflection stared back at me in the glass, a 62-year-old woman in a faded apron, holding a phone that wouldn't stop buzzing with likes and comments on a photo that proved she didn't matter. They didn't forget me, I whispered to my reflection. They left me. The words hung in the air like a confession. Not a mistake. Not an oversight. A choice. They had chosen to leave me behind, to take the trip we'd planned together, to smile for the camera while I stood alone in a kitchen that smelled like betrayal wrapped in sage and butter. I don't know how long I stood there. Time seemed to lose meaning. The next thing I knew, something was burning. I spun around and saw smoke curling out from the oven door. I rushed over and yanked it open, grabbing the oven mitts and pulling out the turkey. It was ruined. The skin was charred black on top, the meat dried out and cracked. I'd been so lost in my thoughts, so consumed by the photo, that I'd let the temperature climb too high. I set the pan down on the stovetop and stared at it. The turkey I'd woken up before dawn to prepare. The centerpiece of a meal no one was coming to eat. And suddenly, I wasn't crying about the food. I was crying because I'd spent my entire life feeding people who didn't think I deserved a seat at their table. A knock at the door startled me. I wiped my eyes quickly and opened it to find Mrs. Hargrove, my neighbor from 2 houses down, standing on the porch with a homemade pumpkin pie. "Happy Thanksgiving, dear," she said warmly. Then her smile faded as she took in my tear-stained face and the smoke still lingering in the air behind me. "Evelyn? What's wrong?" I tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. She stepped inside, set the pie on the hall table, and wrapped her arms around me. I broke down completely, sobbing into her shoulder while she patted my back and made soothing sounds. When I finally calmed down enough to explain, she listened quietly, her expression growing more troubled with each detail. When I finished, she took both my hands in hers and looked me straight in the eye. "You've given them everything, dear," she said softly. "When was the last time you were taken care of?" The question hit me harder than anything else that morning. I couldn't remember. I honestly couldn't remember the last time someone had put me first, had considered my feelings, had treated me like I mattered. After Mrs. Hargrove left, promising to check on me later, I stood in my quiet house and made a decision. I walked upstairs to my bedroom, opened my closet, and pulled out an old folder I kept on the top shelf. Inside was the deed to the house. The house Tom and I bought together 37 years ago. The house I'd raised Daniel in. The house that was mine, and mine alone after Tom passed. I sat on the edge of my bed and stared at the framed photos on my nightstand. Tom's face smiled back at me from our wedding day, young and full of hope. In another frame, Daniel as a baby, wrapped in a blue blanket. A family photo from 10 years ago, all of us together at Christmas. I remembered something Tom had told me once, during one of our late-night conversations in this very room. We'd been talking about his mother, about how she'd let his father's family treat her poorly for decades. Tom had squeezed my hand and said, "Promise me something, Evie. If people don't value you, even people you love, make a life that does. Don't let anyone make you small." I'd promised him. And then I'd spent the 5 years since his death breaking that promise every single day. My phone rang, Daniel's name flashing across the screen. I watched it buzz and vibrate on the nightstand, his smiling face from the contact photo staring up at me. The same face that had been beaming in that airport photo, while I stood alone in my kitchen. I didn't pick up. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. Then I said out loud, to the empty room, to Tom's photo, to myself, no more. The next morning, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. I picked up my phone and searched for moving companies. Most were closed for the holiday weekend, but I finally found one that answered. A young woman with a kind voice listened as I explained what I needed. "You want movers tomorrow?" she asked, surprised. "Ma'am, it's the day after Thanksgiving." "I know," I said calmly. "The sooner, the better." There was a pause. Then, "All right. We can have a crew there by 8 in the morning. Will that work?" "That's perfect." I spent the rest of Friday sorting through a lifetime of belongings. I started in Daniel's old bedroom, the one he'd slept in from age 5 until he left for college. The walls were still painted the blue he'd chosen as a teenager. His old trophies sat on a shelf, dusty but preserved like a museum to a childhood that felt impossibly far away. In the back of his closet, I found a box of old letters and cards. I sat on the floor and read through them, my heart aching with every word. Letters he'd written me from summer camp, full of misspelled words and declarations of missing me. Birthday cards where he'd drawn stick figures of us holding hands. A Mother's Day card from when he was 16, written in his messy teenage handwriting. "Mom, I know I don't say it enough, but you're the best. Thanks for everything. Love, Danny." I held that card for a long time, remembering the sweet boy who'd written it. What had happened to him? When had I become disposable? I kept only a few of the letters, the ones that still felt true. The rest went into a box marked Daniel that I planned to leave behind. Around noon, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find Mr. Brooks, the HOA president, standing on my porch with a clipboard. "Evelyn, I hope I'm not disturbing you," he said. "I just wanted to remind you about the holiday decoration guidelines. We need lights up by—" He stopped mid-sentence, noticing the boxes stacked in the hallway behind me. "Are you moving?" "Yes," I said simply. His eyebrows shot up. "Moving?
When?
Where?"
Soon.
"And I'm not sure yet." He looked genuinely concerned. "Evelyn, is everything all right?" This seemed sudden. I gave him a small smile. "I'm just finally choosing myself, Mr. Brooks." He stood there, stunned, then slowly nodded. "Well, if you need any help, please let me know. You've been a wonderful neighbor." After he left, my phone buzzed with a message. It was from Harper, Paige's younger sister. "Evelyn, are you watching the kids' updates on the family chat? They're having so much fun. The beach is gorgeous. So cute." I stared at the message, my jaw tightening. Harper knew I wasn't there. She had to know. Which meant Paige had told everyone I'd chosen not to come, spinning some story that made me look bad. I could picture it perfectly. "Oh, Evelyn decided she'd rather stay home. You know how she is." I typed back a short reply. "I won't be seeing those photos anymore. Take care, Harper." Her response came immediately. "Wait, what? What do you mean?" I didn't answer. Instead, I went back to packing. That evening, while emptying Daniel's old desk, I found something that made me stop cold. A sealed envelope with my name written on the front in Daniel's handwriting. The ink was faded, the envelope yellowed with age. I carefully opened it and pulled out a Mother's Day card, the kind you buy at the drugstore. Inside, Daniel had written, "Mom, I know I've been distant lately. Work has been crazy and Paige needs a lot of support with the kids. I'm sorry I haven't called as much. I promise I'll make it up to you. You mean everything to me. Love, Daniel. The card was dated 3 years ago. He'd bought it, written in it, but never given it to me. It had sat in this drawer, sealed and forgotten, for 3 years. I sat on the floor and cried until there were no tears left. The movers arrived early Saturday morning, right on schedule. A team of 3 men pulled up in a large truck, and the youngest one, a kind-faced guy named Luis, came to the door first. "Mrs. Hale," he asked. "That's me." He must have seen something in my expression, some shadow of sadness I couldn't quite hide, because his voice softened. "We're going to take good care of your things, ma'am. Don't you worry." Luis was true to his word. As they loaded boxes and furniture, he handled everything with extra care, especially the fragile items. He wrapped my good china in layers of paper like he was protecting something precious. When he found me standing in the empty living room, staring at the bare walls, he quietly said, "New beginnings can be scary, but they can also be beautiful." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. As the house emptied out, I heard echoes I'd never noticed before. My footsteps sounded hollow. My voice bounced off the walls. Every room became a cavern of memories, and I allowed myself to grieve. Not just for the family I'd lost, but for the version of myself who'd tolerated neglect, who'd accepted crumbs of affection, who'd believed love meant making herself smaller so others could feel bigger. My phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. "Mom, we need to talk when we get back."
No apology.
No acknowledgement of what he'd done. Just entitlement, wrapped up in 5 words that assumed I'd be waiting here, ready to smooth things over and pretend nothing had happened. I turned off my phone. By late afternoon, the house was empty except for the dining room table, still set for 6. I'd left it exactly as it was on Thanksgiving morning, a monument to abandonment. The movers had offered to pack it, but I'd told them to leave it. Let Daniel see it when he came back. Let him understand what he'd done. A real estate investor I'd contacted earlier that day drove by to look at the property. He made a cash offer on the spot, no inspection needed, closing in 2 weeks. The number was more than fair. I signed the papers right there on the hood of his car. That night, I sat in the one room that still had furniture, my bedroom, and booked a cabin by a lake 3 states away. It was a place Tom and I had visited once years ago and dreamed about retiring to. We'd walked along the shore holding hands, imagining lazy mornings and quiet evenings. We'd said, someday. Someday was now. I would leave first thing in the morning. Daniel's key turned in the lock Sunday evening, and he pushed open the front door with his shoulder, his arms full of luggage and sandy beach bags. Behind him, Paige juggled 2 exhausted, sunburned children while scrolling through her phone. "Mom," Daniel called out. "We're back. Sorry we're later then." He stopped dead. The foyer was empty. Completely empty.
No coat rack.
No hall table. No family photos on the walls. Just bare hooks and lighter patches on the paint where frames used to hang. "What the hell?" Paige muttered, stepping in beside him. Daniel dropped the bags and rushed through the house, his voice growing more frantic with each room. "Mom?"
Mom.
The living room was bare. The den was bare. Even his old bedroom upstairs was stripped clean. Every room echoed with emptiness except for one. In the dining room, the Thanksgiving table stood exactly as his mother had set it. 6 place settings. His favorite cranberry sauce bowl. Paige's gluten-free serving dish. The kids' pumpkin place cards, slightly faded now. It looked like a museum exhibit. Or a crime scene. Daniel stood in the doorway, his throat tight. The table hadn't been touched. The food had been cleared away, but the plates, the silverware, the carefully arranged decorations remained. A message without words. "This is insane," Paige said from behind him. She probably overreacted. "We told her we needed space. We told her." "We promised her that seat," Daniel interrupted, his voice flat. "Daniel." "We promised her, Paige." Paige's phone rang, and she answered quickly, grateful for the distraction. "Harper, hey. Yeah, we just got back. And what?" "No, I'm not lying." Paige's face went pale. She hadn't realized Daniel was standing close enough to hear the speakerphone. Harper's voice came through loud and clear. Wait, I thought you didn't want her to come? You told me you'd convince Daniel it would be better with just the four of. Paige ended the call, her hand shaking. Daniel turned to stare at his wife, his expression a mixture of shock and rage. What did Harper just say? She's confused, she doesn't. What did she say, Paige? Before Paige could answer, their 7-year-old son tugged on Daniel's sleeve.
Daddy.
His voice was small and scared. Did Grandma leave because we didn't hug her goodbye? The question shattered something inside Daniel. He knelt down and pulled his son into a hug, his eyes burning.
No, Budi. No.
Grandma left because grown-ups made bad choices. Not you. But even as he said it, he knew the truth. He'd made the bad choice. He'd listened to Paige. He'd removed his mother's name from the reservation. He'd convinced himself it would be easier, simpler, more relaxing without her there. And he'd said nothing. Not a word of explanation. Just let her wake up on Thanksgiving morning to discover she'd been erased. After putting the kids to bed, Daniel found the old Mother's Day card he'd written years ago sitting on the kitchen counter. The one he'd never given her. The one he'd forgotten about. His mother had found it. She'd read it. She'd known he'd meant to apologize years ago, but never followed through. He tried calling her. Once.
Twice.
5 times. 10 times. Each call went straight to voicemail. This is Evelyn. Please leave a message.
Beep.
Mom, please. I'm so sorry. Please call me back. Please. Paige stood in the doorway, her arms crossed. She'll get over it. She always does. This is just dramatic. Daniel looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time.
No.
This is permanent. And I deserve it. He called Mrs. Hargrove. She answered on the 3rd ring. Daniel, she said coolly. I wondered when you'd call. Mrs. Hargrove, where's my mom? Is she okay? There was a long pause. She said she was finally taking care of herself. You should have done that too, Daniel. Please, if you know where she is. She deserves better than being left behind. Mr. Brooks gave him the same cold treatment when Daniel knocked on his door. Your mother is a lovely woman. Whatever she's doing now, I hope she's happy. Daniel sat on the bare floor of his childhood home that night, his back against the wall, his head in his hands. I did this, he whispered. I pushed her away. In the morning, while searching through the trash for any clue about where she'd gone, he found a crumpled brochure. Lakeside Cabins. The place his parents had loved. The place they'd always talked about. He grabbed his keys. I'm going to find her. Paige blocked the door. You're being ridiculous. She's fine. She's just making a point. Move, Paige. I'm not going with you. I know. He drove past her and didn't look back. I arrived at the cabin on Monday afternoon, exhausted but strangely peaceful. The drive had been long, the roads winding through forests that grew thicker with each mile. When I finally pulled into the gravel driveway and saw the small wooden cabin nestled among pine trees, something in my chest loosened. It looked exactly like the photos online. Small, rustic, with a wraparound porch and windows facing the lake. I could see the water through the trees, calm and blue under the late autumn sky. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The cabin smelled like cedar and wood smoke. There was a stone fireplace, a tiny kitchen, a bedroom with a quilt-covered bed, and large windows everywhere. Natural light poured in, warm and welcoming. I set down my bags and walked to the window. The view took my breath away. The lake stretched out before me, glassy and still, surrounded by trees whose leaves had turned gold and red. A dock extended into the water, and I could picture myself sitting there in the mornings with a cup of coffee, watching the sunrise. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. That evening, as I unpacked my few belongings, there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find a man around my age, maybe mid-60s, with kind eyes and calloused hands. He wore a flannel shirt and held a basket of fresh vegetables. Evening, he said with a gentle smile.
I'm Joune Hayes.
I live in the cabin just up the hill. Wanted to welcome you to the neighborhood. Evelyn Hale, I said, accepting the basket. Thank you. This is very kind. I grow more than I can eat, he said with a shrug. Tomatoes, squash, some herbs. Figured you might need some supplies after the drive. We talked for a few minutes on the porch. He told me he'd been widowed 3 years ago, that he'd moved here to find peace after his wife passed. He was a carpenter, built custom furniture in his workshop. He didn't pry, didn't ask why I was here alone, didn't push for information I wasn't ready to give. When he left, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time.
Safe.
The next few days passed in a gentle rhythm. I woke with the sun, made coffee, and walked along the lake. The air was cold and clean, and the silence was healing rather than lonely. I started painting again, something I'd abandoned decades ago when life got busy with raising Daniel and taking care of Tom. I set up a small easel on the porch and painted the water, the trees, the way the light changed throughout the day. For the first time in years, I slept through the night. No waking at 3 in the morning worrying about Daniel or replaying conversations or wondering what I'd done wrong. Just deep, dreamless sleep. On Thursday morning, there was another knock. I opened the door expecting Jonah, but instead found Luis, the mover, standing on my porch with a small box. Mrs. Hale, he said, looking embarrassed. I'm so sorry to bother you. You accidentally left this behind in the truck. I was passing through the area and thought I'd drop it off. The box contained a few old photos I'd meant to pack separately. I thanked him profusely and offered him coffee, which he accepted. We sat on the porch, and he told me about his life, his family, his dreams of starting his own moving company someday. Before he left, he squeezed my hand and said, "You deserve a fresh start, Mrs. Hale. I can see it in your eyes. You're already lighter." That afternoon, my phone buzzed. I'd turned it back on that morning, though I'd blocked Daniel's number. The message was from an unsaved number. "Mrs. Hale, this is urgent. It's about your son. Please call me." My heart lurched. I stared at the screen, my hands trembling. Part of me wanted to ignore it. Part of me wanted to throw the phone in the lake. But the mother in me, the part that had held Daniel as a baby and kissed his scraped knees and taught him to ride a bike, couldn't ignore it. I called the number. A man answered. "Mrs. Hale? This is Officer Ramirez. Your son has been trying to reach you. He's been in an accident. Nothing serious, but he's asking for you." My stomach dropped. What kind of accident?
Car accident.
Minor. He's at Mercy Hospital about 2 hours from your current location. He's not injured, but he's quite distressed. I thanked him and hung up. Then I sat on the porch steps and cried, not because I was rushing to Daniel's side, but because I didn't know if I wanted to. That evening, Jonah invited me over for dinner. He'd grilled trout he'd caught that morning, served with roasted vegetables and homemade bread. We ate on his porch, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink. "You seem troubled," he said gently. I told him everything. About Thanksgiving. About Daniel. About the phone call from the officer. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "You don't owe anyone your pain, Evelyn," he finally said. "But you do owe yourself closure." As I walked back to my cabin under a sky full of stars, my phone lit up again. Another message from the unknown number. "Evelyn, it's about Daniel. Please call." I stood at the edge of the lake, the water dark and still before me, and realized I had a choice to make. I called the number back. Officer Ramirez answered on the first ring. "Mrs. Hale, thank you for calling back," he said. "Your son was involved in a minor accident earlier this evening. He's physically fine, just shaken up. He slid off the road during the storm. He's been asking for you repeatedly. Is he hurt?" The words came out automatically, that mother instinct I couldn't suppress no matter how angry I was.
"No, ma'am."
"Minor cuts and bruises. But he seems quite emotionally distressed. He keeps saying he needs to apologize to someone named Evelyn." I closed my eyes. "Where is he now?" "Mercy Hospital, about 2 hours from where you are. He's being kept overnight for observation, standard procedure." After I hung up, I stood at the window of my cabin, staring out at the dark lake. The water looked like black glass, reflecting nothing. My heart pulled in two directions at once. Part of me wanted to get in the car immediately, to rush to Daniel's side like I'd done 1,000 times before when he'd scraped his knee or gotten sick or needed me. But another part, the part that was just beginning to heal, whispered, "You don't have to go. You don't owe him this." I heard footsteps on the porch and turned to see Jonas standing at my door, his expression concerned. I must have looked distressed because he immediately asked if I was all right. I told him about the call, about Daniel, about the hospital. Jonah listened quietly, then said something that cut through all my confusion. "You don't owe anyone your pain, Evelyn, but you do owe yourself closure. Whatever you decide, decide without guilt. Decide because it's what you need, not what someone else expects." I spent the night tossing and turning, unable to sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw two versions of Daniel. The sweet little boy who'd held my hand crossing the street, and the grown man who'd deleted my name from a boarding pass without a second thought. By morning, I knew what I had to do. I called Officer Ramirez again and asked for more details about the accident. "He drove through the storm last night," the officer explained. "Witnesses said he seemed exhausted, distracted. One person heard him muttering apologies, something about someone named Evelyn. He lost control on a curve and slid into a ditch. Lucky he wasn't going faster." My stomach twisted. He'd been driving to find me. In a storm. Exhausted and guilt-ridden and desperate. Part of me felt vindicated. Part of me felt sick. "I'll come," I said quietly. "But not tonight. Tomorrow." I needed one more night. One more night of peace before I stepped back into the mess I'd left behind. That morning, it started to rain. Not a storm, just a soft, steady drizzle that made everything look gray and blurred. I put on my raincoat and walked down to the lake, my boots squelching in the mud. The water was choppy, tiny waves lapping against the shore with a rhythmic sound that matched my heartbeat. I thought about Tom, about what he'd said all those years ago. You can love someone and still step away to save yourself. I realized something standing there in the rain. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want to punish Daniel or make him suffer. I wanted respect. I wanted acknowledgement. I wanted him to understand that love without consideration isn't love at all. When I got back to the cabin, soaked and cold, there was a notification on my phone. A video message from my grandchildren. I almost didn't open it, but curiosity won. The video showed both kids sitting on a hotel bed, their faces too close to the camera. My grandson spoke first, his voice small and uncertain. "Grandma, are you coming with us this time? Daddy said you were, but then you weren't there. Did we do something wrong?" My granddaughter chimed in. "We miss you, Grandma. We wanted to show you the ocean." Their little voices cracked something inside me that Daniel's guilt never could. These children hadn't betrayed me. They hadn't chosen to leave me behind. They were innocent casualties of their parents' thoughtlessness. I played the video 3 more times, tears streaming down my face. That evening, Jonah appeared on my porch with a thermos of tea and a flannel blanket. He didn't say anything, just set them down on the railing and gave me a small nod before walking back to his cabin. It was the first time in years someone had stood beside me without asking for anything in return. That night, I packed a small bag. Not the kind of bag you pack when you're moving back. Just an overnight bag with a change of clothes and my toothbrush. I was going to face Daniel, but I wasn't staying. This cabin was my home now. This lake, this peace, this version of myself I was finally beginning to know. I left at sunrise, my car winding through foggy roads as the world slowly woke up. As I drove away from the lake, I caught a glimpse of Jonas standing on his porch, coffee mug in hand, watching me go. He raised his hand in a small wave. I waved back. I whispered to myself, to the empty car, to the woman I was becoming, I'm choosing myself first. For the first time. What I didn't know was that Daniel had already left the hospital. Against medical advice, he'd checked himself out and gotten back in his rental car. He was driving toward the lake, following the crumpled brochure he'd found. We were both on the road, heading toward each other, neither of us knowing we were about to collide. I reached Mercy Hospital around noon, my hands gripping the steering wheel tighter than necessary. The building was small, just 2 stories, the kind of rural hospital that served towns with populations under 5,000. I parked and sat in the car for a moment, gathering my courage. Inside, the nurse at the desk looked up with a tired smile. "Can I help you?" "I'm looking for Daniel Hale. He was brought in last night after a car accident." Her expression shifted to something sympathetic. "Oh, Mrs. Hale? He left this morning. Against our recommendation, I should add. But he was determined to go." My heart sank. Did he say where he was going?
No, ma'am.
"But he left this for you, just in case you came." She handed me a folded piece of paper. I opened it with shaking hands. Daniel's handwriting, messy and rushed. "Mom, if you don't want to see me, I understand. But I'm trying. I'm going to keep trying until you believe me."
I'm sorry.
I stood there in the hospital lobby, staring at the note, when my phone rang. Harper's name flashed on the screen. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Evelyn." Harper's voice was urgent. "Where are you?" "At the hospital. But Daniel's already gone." "Evelyn, you need to know something. Paige has been telling everyone you abandoned the family. She's spinning this whole narrative about how you're being selfish and dramatic. But I can't stay quiet anymore. You need to hear the truth." Before I could respond, I heard a car horn behind me. I turned to see a black SUV pulling into the parking lot too fast. The driver's door flew open, and Paige stepped out, wearing designer sunglasses and an expression that tried to look wounded but came across as annoyed. "Evelyn," she called out, her voice dripping with false concern. "Thank God. We need to talk." I hung up on Harper and walked toward Paige, my jaw set. "What are you doing here?" "Daniel is a wreck because of you," she said, pulling off her sunglasses dramatically. "He can barely function. And the kids, Evelyn, you've traumatized them. They keep asking where Grandma went and why she doesn't love them anymore." Something inside me snapped. I'd spent years biting my tongue, swallowing my feelings, making myself small to keep the peace. "Not anymore." "No, Paige," I said, my voice steady and cold. What traumatized them was being taught that Grandma is disposable, that she can be erased without explanation, that love is conditional on convenience. Paige's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Before she could recover, another car screeched into the parking lot. Harper jumped out, her face flushed with anger. "Don't believe her, Evelyn," Harper shouted. "She told me she was glad you weren't coming on the trip. She said it would be better without you there, that you were too needy and demanding." The color drained from Paige's face. "Harper, shut up. You don't know what you're." "I know exactly what I'm talking about." Harper turned to me, her eyes pleading. "Evelyn, I'm so sorry. I should have told you months ago. Paige has been complaining about you for years, about how you expect too much attention, how Daniel spends too much time worrying about you. She convinced him to cancel your seat. She told him it would be a better family vacation without you." I stared at Paige, watching her mask crack and crumble. "I know," I said quietly. Paige's face twisted with rage and desperation. "You don't understand what it's like. Everyone always cares about Evelyn. Saint Evelyn, who lost her husband and needs to be taken care of. What about me? What about my needs? I didn't sign up to have my mother-in-law constantly." "Constantly what?" I interrupted. "Constantly loving my son? Constantly babysitting your children? Constantly cooking meals and sending care packages and showing up for every birthday and holiday." The back door of Harper's car flew open and my 2 grandchildren burst out, running straight toward me. "Grandma," they screamed in unison, wrapping their little arms around my waist. I knelt down and hugged them tightly, tears streaming down my face.
Babies.
"I've missed you so much." "Are you mad at us?" my grandson asked, his eyes wide and worried. "Never," I whispered fiercely. "Not for 1 second. This wasn't your fault." Another car pulled into the lot, tires squealing. Daniel's rental car. He jumped out, soaked from the rain, his face pale and exhausted. His eyes found mine across the parking lot, and he froze. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then he walked toward me slowly, like he was approaching a wounded animal that might bolt. Mom, he breathed. I stood up, the children still clinging to my sides. Why, Daniel? My voice came out steadier than I felt. Why did you remove my seat? Why didn't you tell me? Why did you let Paige push me out? Daniel's face crumpled. For the first time in years, I saw him not as a 40-year-old man, but as the scared teenager who used to come to me when life got hard. But I didn't move toward him. I held my ground. Because I thought you'd always be there, he said, his voice breaking. Because it was easier to listen to Paige than to fight for you. Because she made me feel like choosing you meant I wasn't choosing my own family. He wiped his eyes roughly. I was a coward, Mom. I was selfish. And I'm so sorry. I was never asking you to choose, I said quietly. I was asking you to care. Paige, watching her world unravel, suddenly exploded. Everything was fine until you made her feel so important. She thinks she deserves everything. She acts like we owe her. Stop. Daniel's voice was sharp, authoritative. He turned to Paige, and I saw something shift in his expression. Paige, you're the one who pushed her out. You're the one who convinced me it was okay to lie to her. You're the one who... Oh, please, Paige shrieked. Don't act like you didn't want this too. You were relieved when I suggested it. You said it would be easier. The silence that followed was deafening. Daniel looked at the ground, unable to deny it. I felt something break and heal simultaneously in my chest. The truth, finally spoken out loud, was devastating and liberating all at once. You're right, Daniel said softly, looking at me. For a moment, when Paige first suggested it, I thought it would be easier. And that moment of weakness cost me everything. He stepped closer. Mom, I can't take it back. But I need you to know, I'll talk with you. I'll listen. I'll do whatever it takes. But I understand if you can't forgive me. I looked at my son, really looked at him, and saw both the man who'd hurt me and the boy I'd raised. I saw his father's eyes, his grandmother's stubborn chin, my own tendency to avoid conflict until it exploded. I'll talk with you, I said finally. I'll forgive you, given time. But I'm not coming back to that house. My life isn't there anymore. Daniel nodded, tears streaming down his face. I know. The hospital had a small courtyard with benches and a willow tree. Daniel and I sat there while Harper took the kids to get ice cream from a shop down the street. Paige had driven off in a fury, tires screeching. For a long time, neither of us spoke. We just sat there listening to birds and distant traffic. Dad used to bring me here when I was scared, Daniel finally said. Not this hospital, but he'd find quiet places like this and just sit with me until I felt ready to talk. I remember. I've been carrying so much, Mom. After Dad died, I felt like I had to be strong for everyone. For you, for Paige, for the kids. And somewhere along the way, I forgot that you were grieving too. I forgot that you needed support, not just to give it. I listened without interrupting. This was important. Paige sensed my weakness. She knew I was stretched thin, and she played on it. Every time you called, she'd make a comment. Your mother again? Don't you think she's being too needy? And slowly, I started to believe her. I started to see your love as a burden instead of a gift. Why didn't you tell me? I asked quietly. Because I was ashamed. Because I knew it was wrong but didn't have the courage to stand up to her. Because it was easier to avoid conflict than to set boundaries. He looked at me, his eyes red and swollen. Mom, I was wrong. Not just about the trip. About everything. You deserve to be treated like family, not an afterthought. I took a deep breath. Daniel, I love you. I will always love you. But I'm not moving back into that dynamic. I want a relationship with you and the kids. But not one where I disappear so others can feel bigger. I understand, he said. And I don't expect you to. Where are you living now? A cabin by a lake. The place your father and I used to dream about. A small smile crossed his face, sad but genuine. He'd be happy about that. And proud of you. We sat in silence for a while longer. Then Daniel said, Paige and I are separating. I told her this morning before I left to find you. I can't be with someone who taught me to treat the people I love with disrespect. I squeezed his hand, not absolving him, not telling him it was okay, just letting him know I heard him. Harper brought the kids back, their faces sticky with chocolate ice cream. They climbed onto the bench between us, chattering about the flavors they'd tried. My granddaughter showed me a drawing she'd made in the car, a crude sketch of a house by water with stick figures labeled Grandma and Us. "Can we visit your new house?" she asked hopefully. "Harper says it has a lake." I looked at Daniel. He nodded encouragingly. "Yes," I said, pulling her close. "You can visit whenever you want." Before I left, I drove to the cemetery where Tom was buried. It was a 20-minute detour, but I needed to go. His grave sat under an oak tree, the headstone simple and elegant. I placed a small pine cone on it, something we used to collect together on walks. "I think you'd be proud," I said to the stone, to the memory, to the man I'd loved for 37 years. I finally found my voice. I finally chose myself. The drive back to the cabin took 3 hours. As I wound through the mountains, the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. My phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. "Thank you for coming. Thank you for giving me a chance. I love you." I didn't respond right away. I wanted to sit with it, to feel it, to decide how I wanted to move forward. When I finally pulled into the cabin's driveway, I saw Jonah on my porch. He'd fixed the loose railing I'd mentioned in passing, his tools scattered around him. He looked up as I got out of the car, his expression warm and knowing. "Storm's over." "Getting there," I said. That night, I sat by the cabin fireplace with a journal I'd bought in town. I opened it to the first blank page and wrote, "I didn't lose a family. I found myself. For the first time in my entire life, I felt at home. Not because someone else needed me there, but because I chose the place where I could breathe." 1 month later, I woke to birdsong instead of alarm clocks. December had arrived cold and crisp, the lake half frozen at the edges. I made coffee in my little kitchen, wrapped myself in a thick sweater, and stepped onto the porch to watch the sunrise. The sky turned from deep purple to soft pink, the light reflecting off the water like scattered diamonds. I sipped my coffee slowly, savoring the peace that had become my new normal. Around 10 in the morning, I heard the crunch of tires on gravel. I looked up to see Daniel's car pulling into the driveway, the back seat filled with 2 very excited children pressed against the windows. "Grandma," they shouted before the car even stopped. They tumbled out, bundled in winter coats, and ran to me. I caught them in my arms, laughing as they nearly knocked me over. Daniel got out more slowly, carrying bags of groceries. "Morning, Mom. I hope it's okay we came." I know I should have called first, but the kids were so excited. "It's fine," I said, meaning it. He smiled, relieved. "This place is beautiful. I can see why you love it." We spent the afternoon together, and I taught the kids how to paint. I set up small easels by the lake, gave them brushes and watercolors, and showed them how to capture the reflection of trees and water. They painted with wild abandon, more paint ending up on their clothes than on the paper, but they were happy. Daniel watched from a distance, his expression soft. At one point, he walked over to where I stood and said quietly, "I've been going to therapy. Twice a week. I'm learning about boundaries and codependency and how to be a better father and son." "I'm glad," I said. "Paige is fighting the separation. She wants couples counseling, but I told her I need space. I need to figure out who I am without someone telling me who I should be." I squeezed his shoulder, a gesture of support, without sacrificing myself. Around noon, Jonah appeared on the path from his cabin, carrying firewood and a covered dish. "Thought you might need some extra wood for the fireplace," he said. Then he noticed Daniel and the kids and paused. "I'm sorry, I didn't realize you had company. I'll come back." "No, please stay," I said. "Daniel, kids, this is Jonah. He's my neighbor and friend." Jonah set down the wood and shook Daniel's hand. The kids immediately crowded around him, fascinated by his flannel jacket and work boots. He knelt down to their level and showed them a piece of wood he'd carved into a small bird. "Did you make that?" my grandson asked, eyes wide. "I did." Would you like to learn how? For the next hour, Jonah patiently taught the children basic whittling while Daniel and I sat on the porch steps, watching them. He seems like a good man, Daniel said. He is. Are you too? Friends, I said firmly. But yes, he's important to me. Daniel nodded, not pushing. I'm glad you have someone here. I'm glad you're not alone. That evening, I prepared a simple dinner. Not the elaborate Thanksgiving feast I used to kill myself over, but something honest and warm. Roasted chicken, vegetables from Jonah's garden, fresh bread. We ate at the table Jonah had built for me, the one that sat on my porch overlooking the lake. It was just the 6 of us. Daniel, the kids, Jonah, and me.
No tensión. No manipulación.
No walking on eggshells. After dinner, the kids presented me with a handmade card they'd worked on in secret. The front showed a crayon drawing of my cabin, stick figures on the porch, a bright sun overhead. Inside, in wobbly letters, Grandma's cabin, our new tradition. My eyes filled with tears, but this time they were good tears. Healing tears. Daniel lifted his water glass and cleared his throat. I want to say something. He looked at me, his eyes serious and sincere. Mom, you taught me something I never understood before. Loving someone also means respecting their worth. I forgot that. I took you for granted. But I won't make that mistake again. The kids cheered, not fully understanding but sensing the importance of the moment. Jonah raised his glass too, a small smile on his face. After the kids went to bed in the cabin's loft, Daniel prepared to drive back to town. He hugged me on the porch, holding on longer than usual. Thank you for not giving up on me, he whispered. I didn't give up on you, I said. I just stopped giving up on myself. After he left, I walked down to the lake. The moon was full, casting silver light across the water. Jonah appeared beside me, hands in his pockets, comfortable in the silence. You did good today, he said. So did you. The kids adore you. They're good kids. They just needed to see what healthy love looks like. We stood there for a long time, watching the moonlight dance on the waves. Finally, Jonah said goodnight and walked back up the hill to his cabin. I stayed a little longer, breathing in the cold air, feeling the solid earth beneath my feet. I thought about the woman I'd been a month ago, standing in an empty kitchen, staring at a Thanksgiving table set for 6. I thought about the burnt turkey, the abandoned house, the years of making myself small. That woman felt like a stranger now. I pulled out my phone and looked at the family photo Daniel had sent me earlier. All of us together on the porch, smiling. Real smiles, not performed ones. I set it as my wallpaper. Then I opened my journal and wrote, I'm not alone anymore. I'm chosen. And this time, I chose myself first. The lake lapped softly against the shore. An owl hooted in the distance. The cabin behind me glowed warm and golden. I was home. Finally, truly home. Not because someone needed me there, but because I'd built a life worth living. A life where love didn't mean erasure. A life where my voice mattered. A life where I sat at the head of my own table. I whispered into the cold night air, to Tom, to myself, to the universe. I made it. I'm finally free. And as I walked back to my cabin, the stars bright overhead, I knew with absolute certainty that I would never again accept crumbs when I deserved the whole feast. The door closed softly behind me. The fire crackled in the hearth. Tomorrow would bring new joys, new challenges, new moments of peace. But tonight, I simply existed. Whole, valued, chosen. And that was more than enough. When was the last time you chose yourself over keeping the peace, even if it meant losing everything familiar? If this story resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe for more stories about finding your worth when the people you love forget it.